It's so easy to be average. It takes a little something to be special, doesn't it? It takes a little something special to be a great player. Did you push yourself to be great today?
Yeah. The man is Scarlet and Gray. Yeah. Let's go. The man is Scarlet and Gray. What we reading now? Who we listen to? Who we rockin' with hard? The man is Scarlet and Gray. Who we vibing with? Who we riding with? Who we clapping for love? The man is Scarlet and Gray. What we reading now? Who we listen to? Who we rockin' with hard? The man is Scarlet and Gray. Who we vibing with? Who we riding with? Who we clapping for love? The man is Scarlet and Gray. It's time for it. You ready for it? It's MotSaG. You better know it. It's go Bucks. Every time. Hating on us, you better.
Your undisputed source of all things Ohio State. This is the Men of the Scarlet and Gray podcast. Here's your hosts, Shannon Summers and Chip Minnick.
The man is Scarlet and Gray.
Buckeye Nation, welcome into another new and exciting episode of Men of the Scarlet and Gray podcast here on Buckeye Sports Radio, a V-Sporto channel, bringing you all Buckeyes all the time. I'm Shannon Summers, contributor and editor at menofscarletandgray.com. As always, I'm thrilled to be joined by my colleague, Chip Minnick, who is also a contributor and editor at menofscarletandgray.com. How are we doing today, Chip? Are you ready to bring our listeners another great show?
Absolutely. Let's get to it.
Today on the show, we will be reviewing the Minnesota game, which might have a rant or two. We will discuss the Illinois Fighting Illini with Robert Rosenthal from IlliniBoard.com. We also have been sent some more great questions for Ask MotSaG segment, and we have our MotSaG Pick'em where somebody seems to be making some ground up, but I won't gloat. It was me. But before we get into it, I want to remind you to download the free Buckeye Sports Radio iOS and Android apps so you can have your Buckeyes with you wherever you go, and follow the channel on Twitter at Buckeyes Radio.
After further review,
and 6 Gophers at their own 12-yard line. Mitch Ladner gets the snap, drops back at his own 4 to pass, hit ball throwing middle to the 5, intercepted to the 15, coming left side to the 10, to the 5, and into the end zone goes Von Bell for the touchdown, giving Ohio State their 4th score on defense. First down Buckeyes to the Gopher 15. Handoff Elliott straight ahead, 15, moves wide to the right to the 10-yard line, gets behind a blocker to the 5, and punches it into the end zone on the right corner. A 15-yard touchdown run by Ezekiel Elliott. His 4th rushing touchdown of the season, and it's 13-0 Ohio State. Buckeyes to the Gopher 6. Marshall motioning into the backfield. Snap to Jones. Lofts it left corner of the end zone. Michael Thomas got it for 6. Michael Thomas got behind corner Brian Body Calhoun, and he ends up coming with a touchdown pass of 6 yards from Cardale Jones. 20-0 Ohio State. Jones gets the snap out of the shotgun. Takes off running. 35-30 in Minnesota. 20, Cardale Jones. 10-5 touchdown, Cardale Jones. 38-yard quarterback scoring run for Cardale Jones.
All right, Chip, we're going to rewind a little bit and discuss the Minnesota game, the Golden Gophers, the game where I'm actually very upset at a lot of Ohio State fans, and I got into it with one of the Ohio State fans in the stands. So we'll let you go ahead and start this off before I give my hot take.
Well, I'm glad to hear that you sound like in decent voice. Obviously, it did. I hope it didn't become any kind of physical altercation, but my belief is Cardale Jones is best suited as a backup. I think Ohio State fans need to always remember, and I think as time goes by, they will look back on Cardale Jones as just basically being the square peg in the round hole as it relates to the offense. You can just see that the play calling isn't this. It's not nearly as crisp. The offense isn't nearly as crisp, and that doesn't say that Cardale Jones is a bad player. It's just I think that the skill set of everyone around him, especially at the wide receiver positions, that Cardale Jones is a drop back passer. When you look at the other quarterbacks that have played for Urban Meyer since Urban Meyer took over in 2012, when you think about Braxton Miller and then Kenny Guyton playing for an injured Braxton Miller and JT Barrett, and looking at the other quarterbacks that are on the roster with Stephen Collier, Joe Burrow, Torrance Gibson. I'm not going to include any of the recruits until their name is signed on the dotted line. I always look at, it's not a done deal until we see that signed facts. My point being is, with the exception of Cardale Jones, every one of those quarterbacks is mobile. And I just think that Cardale Jones does the best he can in an offensive system that is ill-suited to his talents. For whatever reason, it worked last year much better. Maybe it's the loss of Tom Herman. Maybe it's the loss of Devin Smith, Evan Spencer, and Jeff Hireman. Really don't know, but needless to say, I think the return of JT Barrett will rejuvenate the offense. So I'm going to let you – I know you've got a take that you've been stewing on since Saturday night's victory. Needless to say, on a more not that I think it's a negative commentary about the offense. I mean, they won. I will say that I was very impressed with the Ohio State defense, the fact that they clamped down on Minnesota's run defense, and that's basically their bread and butter. I know Minnesota had 2 touchdown passes, but I never ever felt once Ohio State had that interception by Von Bell, and fortunately that targeting call was reversed because that was a joke.
Yes.
That was
Clearly
pretty much that was the spark. That was the spark that Ohio State needed. Once that happened, I never ever felt the game was in jeopardy. I just thought that Ohio State was just kind of underwhelming and kind of lagging. But the Ohio State defense has really started to come on. So I'm going to let you kind of give your take because you were actually there.
Well, yeah, before we get into my hot take, questions for you just about the defense. I know a lot of folks are up in arms over Minnesota going down and scoring 2 touchdowns off of the throws and stuff. Now, I noticed, I could be wrong, because a lot of people are like, how come we're not getting into the backfield and getting sacks and everything like that? Well, I noticed a less aggressive defensive front trying to get to the quarterback. I noticed, I mean, I could be wrong on this. I just want to, ask your opinion. But I noticed that they're aggressive, but not as aggressive, but they held back in order to be able to stay in their area and prevent any kind of, big runs or anything like that. And then it seemed, I mean, there was times where they were playing man-to-man for the secondary, but it seemed more of a zone. Minnesota was getting a lot of quick outs. I mean, those things, I don't care. Those are hard to defend, plain and simple. I don't care who you are. You can be Von Bell, you could be Eli Apple, you could be Conley, one of the best secondaries in the league or the NCAA. It's hard to guard that kind of stuff. But it seemed that every time you turn around and there was a big passing play, except for one where there's crappy tackling, they found a soft spot, and the guy was pretty much open, the wide receiver for Minnesota. Did you notice that too, like a difference in philosophy maybe for defense?
Yeah, it was frustrating to watch. We were with kind of at a family gathering, and my brother-in-law was becoming exasperated, like you said, kind of, giving up a lot of first downs initially to Minnesota. So I would agree with you. It seemed like there was kind of a different defensive philosophy, but I want to give credit to Minnesota for what it's worth. Minnesota, I know they haven't had the season that they would that they were expecting, and I know that I predicted them to do better than they have. But I've said this before, and I'll say it again. Minnesota is a very fundamentally strong team, and that's part of the reason why I'm advocating Tracy Claeys for that full-time job, because they finally have the stability within that program that they've been lacking. And so many people either forget or ignore the fact that Jerry Kill's staff has pretty much gone with him from stop to stop, all the different coaching places. They've been together for over 20 years. It's in Minnesota's best interest to keep Tracy Claeys and the rest of that coaching staff together if they can.
I agree, and I think from what I've been reading, he might actually hear something on that. He definitely deserves it. I agree with you that they definitely sound. Mitch Leidner, that kid took a licking and kept on ticking. I have to hand it to him. I figure he was going to throw in a towel at some point in time, because every time he turned around, he was picking himself back up, because Bosa, basically threw him down on the ground. He got there a second later, but he was always picking himself up. Thought one time he was actually hurt and he wasn't going to come back. He kept going at it, and they had a lot of heart. You definitely have to give it to Minnesota for the heart that they had. I just think that the change in philosophy defensively right now for Ohio State is you're starting to go against, you're getting ready to go against the Wolverines, who are basically all rushing team. I mean, their quarterback isn't all that great. Your secondary is good, so you can possibly get some turnovers, but the key is stopping the run. Michigan State, Connor Cook, he's a pretty good passer, and they got a decent run game. So it's just, I think they're trying to get to the point, especially building up, and hopefully if they win out and they play Iowa, if Iowa wins out in the Big Ten championship game, you're going to start facing teams that are more run-oriented than pass. So I think that's where a lot of the change is coming from. And it's a good thing, because honestly, we were giving up, 150, 130 yards a game pretty much before this one, and we only gave up 36 yards on the ground. So that's a big improvement.
I'll give you a quick take.
Yeah, as far as had a gentleman decided to boo Cardale Jones. I turned around, said, hey, how can you boo Cardale Jones? How do you boo the guy who won you a national championship? That was last year. He hasn't lost a freaking game. Show the kid some respect. You haven't played college football. I haven't played college football. You don't know what it's like down there. Obviously, there is something fundamentally wrong and something fundamentally different that is going on between last year, the 3 games he played, and what's going on this year. I think it all revolves around Tom Herman and the confidence that he instilled in Cardale. I don't think anybody in this team, coaching-wise or anything, is instilling any kind of confidence in Cardale. I think that's one of his biggest problems. Is Cardale innocent on any of this? No. I mean, one of the play-action fakes, you could see he was staring down the receiver the whole time when he's pulling the ball back and goes to make the throw, and you're like, really? He does, things that you're sitting there scratching your head at, but it's all about the coaching staff instilling confidence in the player. You did not see this last year from him. You've seen a completely different player, and if you read everything afterwards, Tom Herman and his wife were the driving force behind the success of Cardale Jones. He doesn't have anybody this year. He's out there by himself, basically, and he's making a lot of bad calls and everything. And for us as fans to be booing a kid that's in college and won a national championship game and hasn't lost a game, ridiculous. People calling him out on Twitter. He needs thank God he's going to be done and this and that. If you played a snap in college football, then come talk. Then come put out your 2 cents. Otherwise, shut up and enjoy the game and enjoy the players that we have. You are listening to Men in the Scarlet and Gray podcast on Buckeye Sports Radio, a V Sporto channel.
George starting to run free. Breaks it on the left side. All the way out to the 33-yard line. George is gone. to the 3-yard line. There was nobody over here on the right side to defend it. No containment. George. The handoff by Owens to George and a foot race, and he gets away. George is gone. Eddie George putting up more Heisman Trophy numbers. George again, and he is stalking the record. Eddie George looking for an Ohio State record, which is held by Keith Byers. 75, and the new Ohio State rushing record for the moment. He has two. George slams to the end zone. Touchdown. Dick, that is 313 yards. He's the first in history. Here in George now. And here comes Eddie. Here's the ovation.
Well, Robert, thank you for joining us on our Men of the Scarlet and Gray Illinois preview. We really appreciate it.
You got it. Thanks for having me.
So the first few questions that I have is Illinois offensively has some very solid talent in players like quarterback Wes Lunt, running back Keyshawn Vaughn, who was a player Ohio State recruited, wide receiver Geronimo Allison. Can you give our listeners a brief scouting overview of these players in the event that our listeners are unfamiliar with them?
Yeah, I think last week against Purdue, which, because it's Purdue probably, is when everything finally started to click. There's been just some issues getting a running game going, and Josh Ferguson was hurt for 4 weeks, and he's, as the senior tailback, he's been kind of the main cog. And so having Ferguson back for Purdue opened things up for Keyshawn Vaughn, and he runs for 180 yards and breaks off a 78-yard touchdown, and he was everything Illinois was hoping. And, as an Illini fan, there aren't many 4-star running backs that end up in Champaign. So people are really, really excited about a home run hitter like Keyshawn Vaughn. Lunt is who he is. He probably has an NFL arm. He can make every throw. Doesn't have much mobility at all, if any. In fact, last week, I believe, was his first scramble for positive yards in the entire season. So he is the pocket of all pocket quarterbacks. He has probably the best arm in Champaign, probably in quite some time. He can make every throw, but he's really struggled when people close down the pocket on him, and Illinois has 51 drops from receivers on the season, so things just hadn't been clicking until last week, and that's why you go play Purdue.
When you say the best arm in Champaign, I know this is a while back. Would you say, in comparison, like Jeff George, since Jeff George, or do you have another? Yeah, comparison?
I would probably say since Jeff George. Now, Juice Williams had a really strong arm. Like he could throw the ball 70 yards in the air, no problem, just flick his wrist kind of thing. Mm-hmm. But he was just a fastball thrower. He didn't really have much touch, and he was more he wasn't really a touch quarterback. He could throw a lot of bombs, and he was more of a running quarterback. Lunt, if you watch him in practice, and he went to Oklahoma State. He was a 4-star in high school. He went to Oklahoma State and won the starting job as a true freshman there. Got injured, lost the starting job in spring ball, and transferred to Illinois. So he has some talent, and you watch him in practice, he can make every throw. The 22-yard out, he could put it on a dime. His struggle has been with some accuracy issues, some decision-making issues, and even some just mobility issues that he'll just roll out of the pocket and throw it away. Hasn't proven to be much of a big-time playmaker like that. But yes, I mean, you can watch him make a throw in practice, and it's something you haven't seen in Champaign probably since Jeff George, that, zip a 22-yard post pattern, throw that out opposite field, off his back foot kind of thing. He just has that kind of arm.
So let's flip to the other side of the ball, because defensively, Illinois is giving up an average of around 21 points a game, which places Illinois 33rd national in those rankings. So can you give our listeners some players on the defensive side of the ball to keep focused upon, or some areas of the defense that might be able to give Ohio State some problems or challenges?
Yeah, it's been quite a defensive turnaround this year from the last 2 years. Like you said, 33rd nationally in yards, and in some of the other statistics, they're even ranked higher than that. I think some of the Football Outsider stuff has them. I think some of those stats have them like 10th nationally in all the defensive statistics and things like that. So it's been quite the turnaround. Part of that is haven't really played that many high-powered offense. You know, this is the Big Ten West, so every team is built like Iowa or built like Wisconsin or Northwestern, that it's, you know, okay offense and solid defense. So that's part of it probably, but it's been led by the defensive line. Jihad Ward is a senior. He'll be Illinois' first draft pick in several years. Illinois hadn't had anybody drafted in the last 2 drafts, but he'll certainly be that guy. He's been rotating into tackle some. He's a big defensive end. He's 295, 6'7", and really athletic. So he's a guy to watch. But another guy to watch is a guy from Ohio, Dewan Smoot. He's a junior defensive end, leads the team in sacks, and has been really good. And I know, having talked to him at practice, he has this game circled. He's from just outside Columbus. And I think kind of grew up wanting that Ohio State offer, and you know, the 3-star it never came. He chose Illinois, and so I can tell you that Smoot has this one practiced, or this one circled, that he really wants to make a play. So defensive line has been the key the whole season. By improving that, they brought in a new defensive line coach, an NFL guy from Lovie Smith's staff, and it's been quite the turnaround. So the linebackers, secondary, there are players who make a play. I probably need to point out Clayton Fedulum. He's a former walk-on. He's a safety, senior, now a starter, leads the Big Ten in total tackles right now. So that's both good and bad. When your safety leads in tackles, that means they're getting past the linebackers, but they use him a lot as a kind of a stinger safety, kind of that fly toward the line of scrimmage and drop your Sam linebacker into coverage and use your safety as a third linebacker kind of thing. So you got to watch out for number 20 on defense, because he flies around with his head cut off.
Thanks for giving us the heads up on Smoot. You know, because Shannon and I, we're used to hearing from other Big Ten opponents about the Ohio kids that have the kind of the chip on their shoulder kind of mentality of not getting that scholarship from Ohio State. So thanks for, if we see a guy who's kind of playing out of his mind, thanks for the heads up on that.
That's right. So watch out for number 91 on Saturday.
All right. So you just mentioned one of your coaches. So obviously Illinois, they're going through a lot of turmoil. They with everything that happened right before the season started, everything that happened with Mike Thomas, with yesterday, with being relieved from the athletic director. So I'm sure you get this question a lot, but Illinois is 5-4 under Bill Cubit, and in my estimation, he's done a tremendous job based on all of the adversity that's swirling around him and keeping the team as competitive and focused as he possibly can. So if Illinois gets to 6 wins and bowl eligibility, how likely, from your estimation, is it that Cubit's going to become the full-time head coach for Illinois next season and beyond?
Well, my opinion on that changed a little bit yesterday, just because I was of the opinion that Mike Thomas was already out there looking for the next coach and talking to agents and this and that. So I was of the opinion that he wasn't really even considering the interim coach to take the job beyond this year. With Thomas gone, and now, so Illinois is interim university right now, in that the chancellor left her position back in August. That was in July. Tim Beckman was fired in August, and now Mike Thomas is let go in November. So the person to hire the chancellor is probably the president of the board of trustees. So once they get a chancellor in there, that's the boss of the athletic director. And then the athletic director would hire the football coach. With an interim person in all three of those positions, who knows? Do they just hold firm with one more year of interim? Who knows? No one really has any idea. My gut feeling, just knowing how the politics of this whole thing has worked out, is that the Board of Trustees, which is a statewide, over the state university kind of a thing. I don't know if Ohio State has a similar situation, but I believe the Board of Trustees will ask that it's a clean start with a new coach next year. That even though the report mentioned that Bill Cubitt was innocent of anything that Tim Beckman was guilty of, there's probably still the threat of player lawsuits coming. There's probably still some of these players who may sue the university after what was in this report. And I can't see the university saying, oh, well, we kept some of those coaches and we just kept them around. I think they're going to say we wanted a brand new start. We got rid of the football coach. We got rid of the athletic director. We got rid of all the assistants, and we started fresh, for 2016. So in that sense, yes, I do think Cubitt has done a great job. He's 61, about to turn 62. I'm not sure if they would want to go with a coach that age. I think they're probably looking for someone else, but yes, he has done a really good job with all this turmoil to keep this team together.
So that being said, you kind of mentioned that you were under the impression that Mike Thomas, before he was relieved from the athletic director position, was looking at other potential coaches. Do you? And I understand. I mean, everything is kind of in a complete state of flux, but have you read or heard of some potential coaches for Illinois in the event that Cubitt's not named the permanent head coach?
Yeah, I mean, I think most Illinois fans are dreaming, just like we always do, that the guy is, Prince Charming is finally going to arrive and take us out of the basement. The dream candidate is probably Justin Fuente. I don't think he would consider Illinois. I think he's going to have Georgia calling. I think he's going to have South Carolina calling. I think he's going to choose those programs over Illinois. The dream there is that Fuente used to be at Illinois State at the FCS school in the state, and his wife is from Central Illinois. So the idea there was that, they met there when he was at Illinois State, and all the family is there, and maybe he would want to come back to her home state and coach. I don't really see that happening. I think if there were Vegas odds right now, I think the guy with probably the highest odds would be Dino Babers at Bowling Green. And the reason for that is he went to Bowling Green from Eastern Illinois, which is about 45 miles south of Champaign. He was at Eastern for 2 years, and he had Jimmy Garoppolo and, led them deep in the FCS playoffs, and then he got the Bowling Green job. He's from the Baylor coaching tree. He was Baylor's old wide receiver coach under Art Briles. He's kind of the hot name. So if I were to put odds on favorite as to who that guy would be, I would probably say Babers.
Well, like you said, it's certainly going to be bear watching over the next few weeks. When the season concludes, regardless of bowl eligibility or not, what direction Illinois decides to take. Because, as I mentioned at the onset, I think based on the way the season started, I think Bill Cubitt's done as well as you could possibly ask, based on the way that the season began. So,
yeah.
At this point, I'm going to turn it over to Shannon because I know he has some questions for you.
Sure.
Yeah, sticking with the topic about the coach and everything, do you think by letting the athletic director go yesterday, they waited too long with this whole process of everything that has to go on, or it's just that as much as it looks like a train wreck to the outsiders, that everything just got to pretty much play out and settle down?
Yeah, I think what it was yesterday was that the report was finally finished. So the way it played out was allegations started in May. They hired a law firm in Chicago to do an independent investigation. So the school was not part of that investigation at all. The athletic director had asked for preliminary findings before the season. And when that came down 7 days before the first game is when Tim Beckman was fired. but the report wasn't finished. They still needed to talk to more people. They needed to vet out the assistants, all that kind of stuff. So the report was finally finished and presented to the university last week. And that's when the university made the decision that Mike Thomas would step down. Now, I say step down instead of fired because he was fired without cause, which means he still gets his full contract. He actually released a letter to the students and faculty saying he was agreeing to step aside and let someone else take this to a new level. So this wasn't similar to Beckman. Beckman was fired with cause and will not receive any more of his contract and was found at fault in all of this. Mike Thomas was found not at fault, but similar maybe even to the Missouri president. He just stepped aside given that he hired Tim Beckman and all of this was happening on his watch. So yeah, I think they had to, since they made it an independent thing, they are kind of at the mercy of that law firm to say, we're not done. And if it's going to be an independent investigation, they have to be hands off. So they had to just wait, and they just had to see whenever the report would be finished and then read the report and make their decisions from there. So that's kind of how it played out. So yeah, it's kind of a mess. I don't know what the team's going to look like on Saturday. This is hanging over their heads. They'll get asked, I'm sure, after practice this week, well, were you one of the players who was, on the ground and complaining about injury when Tim Beckman did this? It's totally hanging over the program right now. But time-wise, I think it just had to play out like this because it wasn't connected with the university. It was just this independent investigator.
Now, with all the openings that are in the Big Ten, and probably, I'm guessing, more than likely that Rutgers is going to be another one, where do you see the Illinois head coaching position as far as one of the top openings? Or, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah,
going against other schools? Yeah,
it's difficult because our history says basement, right? I can spit all the stats at you that, like in the last 20 years, I think there have been 9 winless seasons in the Big Ten, 0-8 seasons. There have been 9 total, and 4 of them belong to Illinois. We have this amazing ability of going to a BCS Bowl in 2001 and winning the Big Ten outright, solo win of the Big Ten, and then 2 years later we were 1-11. And then in 2007 we go to the Rose Bowl thanks to you guys because you went to the national championship game.
We don't have to talk about that.
Okay, yeah. And so we get to go to the Rose Bowl in 2007, and then 2 years later we're 3-9. So we are the most, schizophrenic program in the Big Ten, that we have the highest highs, but in the last 20 years, just going on Big Ten record, we had a span where we went 2-30 over 4 years, and then another one where we went 4-28 over 4 years. So it's just this roller coaster of, getting to a BCS Bowl and then bottoming out like nobody can. So it's that question then, how much do these allegations play in? How much do these other coaches look at this and say, that's a mess, I don't want to take it over? On the flip side, there are 30 scholarship seniors on next year's team. Almost all of this defense, except for 3 players, comes back, and that includes the second string. And if that defense can be a top 30 defense this year, what could they do next year? With everyone back and all these seniors, and the offense returns almost everyone, and gets Mikey Dudek back from injury and gets 4 other guys back from ACL injuries. So I think roster-wise, if coaches look at it, it's probably more attractive than even Minnesota. But situation-wise, can I win there? Will I have administrative support? It's got to be down there with Rutgers. As coaches consulting their friends and then tell them, "Hey, man, stay away. You don't want to try and take over that mess."
So basically, you're the Cleveland Browns of the Big Ten.
Yes, I think so. I have a friend who's a Browns fan, and we talk about that all the time. But
well, the sad thing is, Chip and I are both Browns fans, also. Okay. So yeah. we're allowed to make fun of it.
Yes, yeah. It just works like that. It's so weird. It's so hard for the fan base because Illinois fans have been there, right? 2001, they didn't get to go to the Rose Bowl because the Rose Bowl was the national championship game, so they had to go to the Sugar Bowl that year. But they won the Big Ten outright, and then did it. Went to the Rose Bowl in 2007. There's others. Purdue's not doing that. Iowa's not. Okay, Iowa's been there a couple times, but Northwestern's not doing that. Minnesota's not doing that. Illinois can reach those heights and has a great recruiting base in the state, but it's just since 1990 just hasn't had the right guy in front.
All right, switching gears, let's go ahead and start talking about the football team in the game. Illinois seems to have a tradition of helping Ohio State Heisman candidates reach that next level and basically winning on the backs of the Illinois rushing defense.
Eddie George is still running in 1995 in my dream.
Yeah, that he is.
Yes.
Being the 34th best rushing defense in the country currently, do you think that the Fighting Illini will prevent Zeke from possibly getting any hardware?
I think Zeke will have a good game because if you look at our game against North Carolina, their tailback, Elijah Hood, had a really good game. We haven't faced that many high-end tailbacks. We faced Iowa, and Kanziri ran for 258 yards against us. He had 44 carries or something crazy, but Iowa was able to just grind it out on the ground, and we eventually wore down. The thing about the defense is it's pretty solid. The starters are pretty solid, and I believe it's a top 30 defense. It's really improved and has really been playing well, but it's not that deep. And, in the fourth quarter of Iowa, in the fourth quarter of Penn State game, in the fourth quarter against North Carolina, we just fell apart. We're not subbing much in the first three quarters. And those players, if you're not rotating and you're not subbing out, they're just going to wear down. So, it's been key, like in a game like Purdue, the offense is playing ball control and they're running the ball, and the defense is fresh and played really well. If Ohio State can control the ground game and if they can control the clock and wear down that defense, by the fourth quarter, I think Zeke might be doing what he did against Indiana.
No, we talked about how in 2007 you guys decided to knock Ohio State off.
We did decide to do that, yes.
But Illinois has been known to pull some trickery out and everything. Do you think that they have anything in store, in your opinion, in order to try to ruin Ohio State's playoff hopes?
I would love to see 2007 again, obviously. I have a good friend who's an Ohio State fan, and we do this golf weekend every summer with a bunch of my friends, and so we were talking about this game this summer. And I made a prediction to him at the time because, you guys are coming off a national title, and we're coming off, barely making the Heart of Dallas Bowl, and I told him, look, we're going to lead that game at halftime. This is what I told him in July, before Beckman was fired for anything. I said, we're going to lead that game at halftime, and then we're going to lose by 31. Because I really think, it's kind of a trap game for you guys because you're staring at Michigan State and Michigan right now. So that rogue November trap game is always there for every team. And B, I think we do have this thing when we play you that we come out, even 2006, when you guys were in the national title game, the final of that game was 17-10. You were favored by 26 or whatever.
Right.
2008, it was a much closer game than it needed to be. There's just all of these, every year has this, anytime there's a situation like that, for some reason we play up for you guys. But yeah, can we pull out a victory? I highly, highly doubt it. I can't see that at all. I think we can play well and play with some emotion, but I just don't think we have the depth to play 60 minutes.
Illinois has been, I think they're tied for first with Memphis in special teams with 5 block kicks, 2 block punts, 2 blocked point after attempts, and 1 field goal. And it looks like junior defensive tackle Rob Bain, he's got 2 or 3 of those. What's the trick to keeping him on the ground so he stops blocking stuff?
Yeah, he's been great. He's been great at that, line up over the long snapper and slide sideways and lean and get the big mitt in the air, and has actually, I think he blocked the first 2 extra points at Penn State. Like, they're talking about, this kicker's got to get it up in the air because Bain blocked the last one, and he goes ahead and does the next one. So it's been interesting. They changed special teams coaches in the offseason. The guy who was the recruiting coordinator, the younger guy, used to be at Ohio State as a grad assistant, Alex Golish. He took over the special teams, and they've blocked 2 for touchdowns. They've blocked 2 punts for touchdowns, and have really improved on special teams. So it's been a bright spot, and that helps. When you're a team like Illinois and you struggle with you're going to lose the yardage battle maybe, and you're not going to hold the run, and you don't have that go-to home run hitter on offense. You've got to do the little things, and blocking extra points and blocking punts for touchdowns is certainly part of that.
What do you think, or what do you feel the odds of getting 2 wins in your final 3 games against Ohio State, Minnesota, and Northwestern could be in order to be able to get that bowl?
Well, actually, they just need 1. After beating Purdue, they're 5-4. So
you're right. You're right.
So just getting 1 more win, I'd like to think that they're going to split the Northwestern and Minnesota games. Minnesota's on the road, and Northwestern is in a neutral site. We're playing them in Soldier Field in Chicago after Thanksgiving, which I'm sure you guys will tune in. You don't have any big game going on the Saturday after Thanksgiving.
No.
But I mean, it's, again, in the Big Ten West, you're just playing the same team every week. You're playing Nebraska, Nebraska, I guess, is a little different. But Northwestern, Iowa, Wisconsin, Minnesota, it's great defense and so-so offense. And Illinois is probably solid defense and so-so offense. So, it's one of those matchups that's going to come down to those little things of, maybe it's a 2017 game, or it's a 16-13 game, and, who's going to hit the field goal. We talk about Illinois and say how close we are to bowl eligibility. Well, on the flip side, we played Middle Tennessee State at home in September, and they lined up we were leading by 2, they lined up for a 40-yard field goal, and they hook it left. So we survived that game. That field goal goes through, that's a loss. The next week against Nebraska, for some reason, I don't know if you guys are aware of this play. It's probably the dumbest coaching decision I've seen in Champaign in 5 years. Nebraska's running out the clock. They have 3rd down. We're out of timeouts. There's 50 seconds left, and they throw the ball incomplete. So they could have dribbled the clock down to 10 seconds left at hour 30 and then, pooch, punt it, whatever on 4th down. They throw it on 3rd down, then try and pick up the first down on 4th down. We get the ball back with 50 seconds left, drive the length of the field, and score a touchdown, and win the game. So Illinois is very close to being a 3-win team right now. You change those 2 plays, make that field goal go good, and Nebraska just takes a knee on 3rd down and then punts with 10 seconds left. This is a totally different, season we're talking about. So it's pretty close to needing to rally at the end of the season. I think they can do it. I think one of those 2 games will go their way. They got up for Northwestern last year, and it was the 5-6 bowl. Both teams are 5-6, so the winner gets to go to a bowl game and the loser goes home. And Illinois went up to Northwestern and destroyed them. So, I think if Illinois doesn't win in Minnesota, they're gonna pull out the Northwestern game and get to another bowl.
Awesome. What are your keys? What are the keys, in your opinion, for the Fighting Illini to kick the Buckeyes out of Memorial Stadium and Champaign with their tails between their legs, and keeping the world famous Illabuck home?
The Illabuck, that's right. To bring Illabuck back, it would take turnovers. It's going to take it. This defense can do it. This defense can. They have gathered a lot of interceptions. They can force fumbles. They get a lot of tackles for loss. They have a good defensive line and a decent, aware linebackers that that have gotten a lot of tackles for loss. So they can do it. They can force turnovers, but that's what it's going to take. It would take Lunt having his best game of the season. It would take the receivers to stop dropping the ball. Again, last year in 13 games, Illinois had 19 drops. This year, in 9 games, Illinois has 51 dropped passes. And on my blog, I literally last week went and did a screen cap of all 51 drops because it's something I've never seen. I've never seen a team drop half this many balls, and they dropped 51 passes. So they would have to catch everything. They would have to force some turnovers, and they'd have to get those little things, a blocked field goal here, a long kick return there, something like that to do it. It would take that kind of effort.
Is your wide receiver coach's name Braylon Edwards?
No, it's Mike Bellamy. Yes. He's it was funny because when he first came from JUCO, he was an Illinois player in the 80s, and I remember when I was like in high school, he was kind of known as that, like right at the beginning. I remember he dropped a couple big passes. I think we were playing USC or something like that. So, there was that talk of like, is he teaching the drops like he did his first season in Illinois? That type of thing.
Yeah, it just seems, especially being a Browns fan, maybe you had Braylon Edwards as your wide receiver coach.
Yeah.
Because apparently Michigan's always had great wide receivers or something in their eyes. As far as any Ohio State fans that are going to come enjoy Champaign, do you have any suggestions for? We usually ask, for places to enjoy eating and hanging out and stuff like that, or what the atmosphere is going to be like.
Yep. Well, I'll give you a couple. The place everybody tells everybody to go is the barbecue place called Black Dog in Urbana. They're building a new one in Champaign, I think. Black Dog is always the hot place that people tell people to go. As far as bars, I would I'll go back. I was a student in the early '90s, and so I always tell people to go to Cam's, which is the bar on the college campus that smells like urine. That's but it's a good kind of smell like urine. That's the best kind of. I mean, there are better places. Downtown Champaign, which is a little bit far from campus, but has really been revitalized the last 15 years, at least since I've been there. And there are some really great places downtown. So, for a fan coming to town, I'm like, well, you could go to the college bar scene if you want, and that's there you can go to Cam's, or you can go off campus and head downtown, and there's some really solid places there.
Excellent. You are listening to Men in the Scarlet and Gray podcast on Buckeye Sports Radio, a V Sporto channel.
Here they come, yo. Here they come.
One's a riverboat gambler, picking with his gut. The other is cold, calculating, which makes Vegas nervous. Now it's time for MotSaG's Pickup. Who are you going to ride with?
All right, now it's time for the MotSaG Pick'em, where I finally gained a game on Chip, and we'll see how this week goes. Need to gain a lot of traction here in the next couple of weeks. We'll start off with the Maryland versus Michigan State at 12 p.m. Robert, since you're our guest, we'll let you go ahead and go first.
Okay, so Maryland, Michigan State, obviously, it's got to be Michigan State. I'll save my upset pick for something else.
I agree with Robert. I think Michigan State. It's a noon kickoff in Spartan Stadium. I think the Terrapins are going to be on the bad end of a lot of pent up aggression from Mark D'Antonio and Michigan State.
Well, if they keep their receivers in bounds, then maybe they got a shot at
That's right.
Not winning the game here. So I'm going to go with Sparty on this one also. Our next one, we're going to go with Purdue versus Northwestern. I believe that's also a 12 p.m. game.
Yeah, it's so I don't hate Northwestern as much as you guys hate Michigan, but I hate Northwestern. So I would love to pick Purdue there, but after seeing what Purdue did last week, they're just not good. So I'll take Northwestern.
I'm going to agree with Robert. I think just when I thought Purdue was kind of turning the corner with that Nebraska upset, they went out and were completely blasted by Illinois. Give credit to Illinois for that. So I think Northwestern, they're feeling pretty good about themselves. I'm going to go with Northwestern in that 12 o'clock game on BTN.
Yeah, I'm going to go with the Wildcats on this one too. No sense beating a dead horse on this. All right, we got that team up north versus the Hoosiers. Go ahead, Rob.
Do I get to say their name, or do I have to say that?
Yeah, that's just us.
Well, I just call them scum. So I've never typed anything besides lowercase SC, capital U, capital M. But yes, I'm going to have to take scum in that game.
Yeah, I think Indiana, I think they played as hard as they could against Iowa. I just think they're starting to run out physically and psychologically. I think the Wolverines, even though they're on the road at 3:30 in Bloomington, I think the Wolverines are going to take it to them.
Yeah, I think it seems anybody who comes up against, for some reason, Ohio State and gives it their all and falls, they just tumble. And they haven't recovered since the Ohio State game and thought they were going to be a lot better. I would love to pick the Hoosiers in this, but, yeah, Khaki Pants is Hoosier Daddy in this one. The Minnesota Golden Gophers against the unbeaten Iowa Hawkeyes.
Here's my upset pick. I'm going with Minnesota. It's an underrated rivalry. People don't realize that Minnesota hates Iowa, like hates Iowa, and vice versa. So, Iowa's been hanging on and doing just enough. And, heck, Illinois at Iowa 3 weeks ago, Illinois got the ball back with 3 minutes to go and was driving to the winning score when they fumbled. So, Iowa barely beat Illinois. So, I'm going to take Minnesota in this game.
That's a very gutsy call. I can see the logic behind it too. I'm gonna disagree. I think the fact that it's an 8 o'clock game on BTN, and I agree. I think Iowa's been living dangerously. I just think that I'm just going to go with the fact that it's in Kinnick Stadium, and those people, besides getting their corn crop ready all day, I'm sure they will have found some adult beverages. I think they're going to be loud and raucous. So I'm going to go with Iowa in a very close one. But I was really impressed with Minnesota last week, for what it's worth.
Well, I'm actually interested in the way Rob went, because I was thinking more or less along the same lines. Minnesota almost pulled off the upset against that team up north. They played Ohio State pretty tough. And anybody who has uniforms that look like the Pittsburgh Steelers, I'm going to have to go against them. So I'm going to go Golden Gophers myself.
There you go.
All right.
Nebraska against Rutgers.
I feel like, so Nebraska fans are all about it now. Like, the bowl was gone, but now, they beat Michigan State, and so they'll just get rid of Rutgers and then, upset Iowa and qualify for a bowl. But I think this game will be closer than most think, but I'll take Nebraska. But I think it's going to be close.
I agree with Rob. That's a 3:30 kickoff, another BTN game. It's in High Point Solution Stadium. I think it'll be very close, but I think Nebraska, I think hope, it's not springing eternal, it's clinging on by the slimmest of threads and questionable officiating calls, but it's there for Nebraska.
This just in, Kyle Flood will be gone at the end of the season. I said it last week, if Michigan scored 40 or more points against Rutgers, with that team not having an offense, they were definitely going to be getting rid of him, and I don't see him recovering. The team's obviously just walked away from this. 3 weeks in a row, you've given up 40-plus points. I'm going Nebraska. Let's see. Probably the number one team, or actually it'll probably be jumped up to number 2, Alabama versus Mississippi State.
Oh man, I got a Mississippi State coworker who is ready for this game, and I just can't do it. It's going to be Alabama. The way they choked Leonard Fournette last week and just shut him down, and just didn't even stack the box. They just beat LSU's running game. I just can't take anybody but Alabama.
I agree with Robert. I think Alabama, they'll probably, like you said, Shannon, they'll probably be number 2 by the time we get this recorded and posted. But I think Mississippi State, they're a better team than most people realize. I think Dan Mullen's a better coach than most people realize for what he has to work with. And I know the game's in Stark Vegas, as our friend Bill King might say. 3:30 game on CBS, but I think too much the Crimson Tide will take it to them.
Yeah, Mississippi State's improved, and Dak Prescott, he's not having a year like he had last year. I see the Crimson Tide rolling in this one. They've got the playoffs in their eyes. The matchup of the week, the Big 12, who doesn't play any defense. So we're going to see about 500 points in this game. Baylor versus Oklahoma.
Man, that's a good one. I you know what? I'm gonna go with Oklahoma only because of Baylor's freshman quarterback. He looked really good last week, and they held on. What was it, K-State they played? But I at some point, if you lose your quarterback to a neck injury and you're streaming toward it, you just have to have that game, and it's got to come against Oklahoma. So give me Oklahoma.
I'm going to go with Baylor simply because it's home. And I know that sounds like a very flimsy argument. The reality is I really kind of I can't imagine this. I agree with Shannon. I think this can be really high scoring. I was really impressed with Jarrett Stidham, like you, Robert, watching him against Kansas State. I just think the fact that it's at home, that's going to make the difference. I'm going to go with Baylor, but it's not going to be a blowout by any stretch.
I'm going to go with Oklahoma. I think they have a better defense than Baylor does. Like Rob said, the freshman quarterback, I know he's probably going to be improved from last week, but it's just the simple fact that Oklahoma's got a better defense, and I like their running back. I'm going with the Sooners in this one. They're on a mission in order to get that taste of the Texas loss out of their mouth, and they want to walk away with a Big 12 championship and try to get a bid for the playoffs. Now, the only game that means anything in college football, the Ohio State Buckeyes versus the Fighting Illini of Illinois. Rob?
I'm going to stick with my June prediction with my friend that Illinois leads at halftime, something like 14-13 with 2 turnovers, and then loses by 31. So give me Ohio State.
Excellent. Chip?
Well, I think it will be close. Robert took us down a somewhat, I don't want to say unpleasant trip down memory lane. Obviously, he referenced the 2006 game where Ohio State won in a close one. I was thinking of the 2002 game that went into overtime. I think this game for Ohio State fans, I don't know what it is about Illinois. I don't know if it's the way that the wind blows in the tunnel, or in the stadium. I don't know what it is, but Illinois always plays Ohio State tough. I'm going to go Ohio State 35, Illinois 21, and I'm looking for Ohio State to pull away in the fourth quarter to get to that score.
Awesome. I see an angry team. I see an upset team. I see a hurt team. I see JT Barrett back under center taking over the team. I see everybody sick and tired of talking about the whole situation that happened and the crying of one game, not enough games, blah, 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 and all that, and everybody wants to put it behind them. I see a statement coming. Everybody's sitting there saying, especially after this last week, Ohio State doesn't deserve to even be mentioned for the playoffs because they haven't played anybody. It's been close. So I'm seeing that you're going to see something possibly in the range of 56-7 in this game. Ohio State.
Going big.
Go big or go home. All right, Rob, we want to thank you for joining us. You want to go ahead and plug your stuff? Let our listeners know about you?
Sure. I'm on a site called IlliniBoard.com. I used to have my own blog, and then I joined a guy who had a message board for years, and so we joined up and added some other writers. So all my stuff is always there, and if you're there right now, you can see me lamenting the fact that every single person in charge at the university is an interim. So pray for us, Illini fans.
Yeah, that is kind of a crazy situation. At least the only positive is that you have Rutgers taken away from a lot of the black eye that you guys have sustained from Beckman. So there's a positive there.
Yep, I think that's correct. Yep. And one other positive, we're in the Big Ten West. And Big Ten West is as wide. I mean, Nebraska, who knows? Wisconsin, sure, but I am so happy that Indiana got sent to the East and we got sent to the West. It's perfection for me.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. Everybody's stacked up in the East, and you just had that dogfight over in the West. But it's definitely fun to watch and enjoy on Saturdays.
Yep.
All right, well, we want to thank you for coming on and sharing all your knowledge and information about the Fighting Illini with us.
I appreciate it, guys. Thanks.
Thanks so much.
It's time now for Ask MotSaG. What's your question?
Can I kick it? Can I kick it? Can I kick it? Can I kick it?
So the first question that we received for our Ask MotSaG comes from our loyal fan Gio, who he asked the question, did you know the Buckeyes have Oregon, Oklahoma, TCU, Boston College, Texas, Notre Dame on future schedules? What will Ohio State haters say then? The answer is yes. I was aware of Ohio State upgrading their future schedules, and I want to give props to former Buckeye and ESPN analyst Kirk Herbstreit last week on the first results of the college football playoff. Kirk Herbstreit on national television said to Baylor, said to Texas Christian, this idea that you can schedule anyone you want and it not affect you. The first results spoke for themselves. The strength of schedule does matter. So I want to give credit to Gene Smith, to Urban Meyer, to anyone associated with Ohio State football for trying to do whatever they can to beef up and boost up Ohio State's non-conference schedule, because that's absolutely a critical component going forward in the playoff era.
Now, if somebody last week, when I don't know, if we would have sat here and discussed the possible top 4 teams of the college football committee was going to come out with, I mean, if we would have actually sat here and discussed, what I thought that the Big 12 was going to do and wasn't told it's not going to happen, maybe, no, I'm just kidding. I knew, and you could just tell by talking and listening to other people in college football, the Big 12 was going to get spanked, and they're going to get spanked hard based on their scheduling.
Well, what's going to happen, and I kind of alluded to this a few weeks ago with our Buckeye Roundtable, and just to kind of reiterate it, is the gamble that the Big 12, and it's very convenient and easy to take shots at Baylor, but the Big 12 as a conference, the logic that they have of backloading their schedule, with the idea that, okay, well, we're going to be playing each other kind of in a round robin type of, method in the month of November. The gamble that they take is, all right, what can potentially happen is they can basically eliminate each other from the playoff by not having a stronger non-conference at the front. So we'll see how it all shakes out. I mean, football is my dad used to tell me a football is a funny shaped ball that can take a lot of weird bounces and you know, you never know what's going to happen, you know, in any season. And Ohio State fans certainly shouldn't be too overconfident at this stage, considering Ohio State's going into the teeth of their schedule. So
I definitely agree. And my biggest thing is Ohio State's been doing this for years now, scheduling at least one tough opponent. And for years, everybody's been coming out and saying that Ohio State doesn't schedule anybody. Don't know how many teams. I mean, we're not talking about Notre Dame or anything like that because they're non-conference, they're independent, so they've usually scheduled one of the toughest schedules. But how many teams actually made sure for years to play one Power 5 team every single year? And it just so happens, except for the USC and Texas years in recent memory, that everybody else seems to be having a down year when we play them. So it's Ohio State doesn't play anybody. When Ohio State scheduled Virginia Tech was good. When Ohio State scheduled Cal was good. Ohio State's got Boston College scheduled. They got TCU scheduled. You know, like we were saying, we got all these other teams. So when we go in and play them and they're not good, is that our fault?
Yeah, it's a gamble. Make no mistake about it, because the way that the schedules, with all due respect to Gio, you know, bringing up, you know, Notre Dame, for example, well, that's in memory. I don't have it in front of me, but I want to say that's like 2022, something like that.
Right.
So, and more than likely, Notre Dame will be competitive, but you never know. I mean, what if, and I'm not saying that this is going to happen, but there was a period when the latter portion of the Charlie Weiss era in Notre Dame, when Notre Dame was terrible. So, you know what I'm saying? Like, you know, you don't know scheduling so far in advance. That's one of the dangers to it. But I agree with you completely that it is imperative, especially in the playoff era, that you have to schedule at least one, in your estimation, one quality, competitive, non-conference opponent. And and keep in mind, the Big Ten's moving to a 9-game conference schedule in the next few years, so it's only going to make the strength of schedule component for not just Ohio State but the entire Big Ten that much better.
Right, and I think I can't remember the year because I don't have it in front of me, and I don't feel like trying to pull it up right now. But I think it's 2023 possibly, where we're playing 3 Power 5 teams. Could
be, like I said. So yeah, we could look that up. You know, right, at a future.
Exactly. So they've been, in my eyes, and I know it's a lot of bias, but in my eyes, they've been one of the leaders as far as going out and scheduling a Power 5 team every single year. And it's a true home and home. You don't get that at the SEC.
So the other question that we were asked, or I should say other questions that kind of relate to the playoffs, and this was actually from at RonJW1, a couple questions. The first one that refers to kind of the playoffs. He wants to know if we believe the Buckeyes drop in the poll and who will join the poll after LSU lost. I don't see Ohio State dropping in the polls. I really don't care, to be honest. As long as we're in the top 4, I really don't care. 1st through 4, it doesn't really matter at this stage. I'm predicting that Clemson's going to hold on to number 1. I think Alabama will be number 2, Ohio State number 3, and by virtue of the LSU loss, I think Notre Dame will be 4th, but it would not surprise me if Oklahoma State made a major move up, maybe not necessarily to top 4, because I believe they were on the perimeter of the top 10, if I'm not mistaken, from last week. But I think Oklahoma State is making a move. So I think it'll be Clemson, Alabama, Ohio State, Notre Dame tonight.
I agree with you. I definitely agree with you. As far as how it shakes out, I think it's going to be Clemson, Ohio State, Alabama. And Notre Dame, I don't think – I mean, yeah, they beat LSU, but I don't think amongst the committee that – I mean, we could be wrong, but I don't think they're going to jump Alabama with one loss over an undefeated Ohio State, no matter the strength of schedule or anything.
So the other question that at Ron JW1 asked is he wants to know if it is a guarantee that JT Barrett will start this week against Illinois, because he certainly hopes so. I wouldn't say that it's a guarantee. I trust Coach Meyer implicitly. The punishment, the judgment, fair or unfair about, he should be suspended longer. I think there are things that are discussions, and I'm sure raised volume behind closed doors that we are not privy to. It wouldn't shock me if Cardale Jones started but quickly gave way to JT. But I'm thinking JT's going to start.
Yeah, I see JT starting from beginning. Now, while we're on this subject real quick, I just want a little antidote and just a little hot take or whatever you want to call it. I don't know if you noticed today, JT went in front of the judge.
Mm-hmm.
He pled guilty to an OVI, DUI, whatever you want to call it. Now, living in the great state of Ohio, anytime you get your first one, what can you always do with it?
I'm not, something, I have to plead ignorance here, because is that something that you can challenge, or
it's something that you could plead down?
That's what I was going to say. It's like
and usually 9 times out of 10 get a reckless op out of it. So it's not going to be, you're not going to lose your license. Unless you have other points on your license, but you're not going to lose your license. Usually, and it's a lesser charge of not having the DUI or OVI, whatever you want to call it, on your record. He walked into court and pled guilty to it. Didn't plead it down, and he's taken the punishment that's handed to him. 6 months suspended driver's license, $400 fine, whatever, plus your court costs and everything. I mean, here's a kid that's been driving back and forth from Texas whenever he had time, and he's not going to be able to drive back and forth now. He made a mistake. He's owned up to it. He's manned up to it. I give him a lot of credit for standing up and taking responsibility, not trying to plead anything down, because I'm sorry, if I was in his shoes, I'd have been trying to plead it down to a reckless op myself.
Yeah, good point.
So, I mean, my hat's off to him, and we're moving on. It's over and done with. He's paid his price as far as, society, what normally happens in the state of Ohio as far as your first offense. Everybody else in the country, first offense as far as a DUI, 1 game. It's Ohio State. It's the same frickin' penalty. Move on.
So to try and put you in a happier mood, because I could tell that this topic has soured you. Gio has another question, and this is, I think, it's a good question just based on the way things have been going so far this season. Has this been the craziest season with game endings ever? I would say that maybe not necessarily the endings, but definitely the role of the officiating in the endings, in my estimation, with everything that happened with Duke, Miami, Michigan State, Nebraska. I mean, I think it's certainly a few weeks ago, Georgia Tech pulled off the upset against Florida State, and that was not poor officiating. And then watching Mississippi and Arkansas, the way that one finished up too. I mean, there have been some crazy endings, but I definitely think the officiating has played too much of a role in the endings this season. That's my quick take on it.
Yeah, something's going to have to change as far as the officiating and stuff, because now you're coming into the area of a team possibly losing a playoff bid, and derailing their season over something. Now, look, you look at the Michigan State game, and you want to sit there and say the guy was out of bounds, the wide receiver was out of bounds, it came back in bounds, Michigan State should have won that game. as much as it would pain me, even being an Ohio State fan, if something like that were to happen to Ohio State, what we've learned over the years being football fans is it's not one play that costs you the game. There are other plays leading up to it. There are other plays in that Michigan State game that cost Michigan State the win. All these other games at the end where the officials made a bad call possibly or judgment call or something like that, it wasn't just that one. Now, has it been the craziest? It's up there. I can't tell you a specific year off the top of my head, but this is something that's been going on for years. But something does need to be done, whether adding another official on the field possibly or allowing expanded replay for the final play of the game or something. But something is going to need to be changed in order to, I mean, these kids are putting in too much hard work for a human to make a wrong judgment call and cost them a season.
So we have a couple questions from our loyal listener at OSU Girl 47. And one of them is actually directly to you, but the first question, I'll just lump these in together. Do you feel our offensive lines working well together? The offensive line, seem a bit inconsistent, especially early in the games, although they appear to improve as the game goes on. I think the offensive line is just like the rest of the team. I think at this stage of the season, they're starting to become the cohesion is starting to become better. I think the offensive coaches did not help Cardale Jones enough with the style of play that would have best suited him, but that's kind of a different topic. But the other question, this one was directly to you, is that Shannon being at the game, one sees the whole field. What takeaways do you have about the offensive play calling against Minnesota?
Well, it's kind of weird because where I was at was basically like the all-22 view, and I'm sitting there just watching every movement, everything that I could possibly catch. You notice that the offensive line blocks a lot different for Cardale than it does for JT. Now they can get off of blocks a lot quicker because the option and all that kind of stuff, and it's just a little bit more of a free-flowing, quicker pace. But that also comes to, like you and I are talking pre-show, I was noticing and paying attention, if they got the plays called in and they were up to the line within a play clock hitting 24 seconds, the offense was able to move the ball. Once they hit 20 seconds, 15 seconds, 10 seconds, each 5 seconds, it was less and less of a chance of the offense moving the ball, and it derailed them. I don't know if it's how the plays are coming in, how it's, coming about that sometimes he's getting the plays on time and early, other times it's taking way too long. I don't know if it's just trying to figure out what they're going to do or what. I noticed a lot of times they were running Zeke right into the teeth of the defense, could run some counters and stuff like that. It seems like I don't know if this is Cardale or if the coaches won't let him, but you could see 9 guys in the box, and he can't check out of the play, knowing what play's coming. It was kind of difficult.
So the other, just before we finish up, just to kind of circle back, you are correct. In 2023, Ohio State is presently scheduled to play Boston College, Texas, and at Notre Dame in 2023. In 2022, they play Notre Dame and at Texas. So, again, it speaks to the wisdom of beefing up and building up that non-conference schedule in this playoff era. So, last question from at OSU Girl 47 is, she wants to know if there is a defense left on our schedule that can stop Zeke like Bama stopped Leonard Fournette. I believe that after Illinois, the two defenses, Michigan State and at that team up north, they will both do everything they can to sell out against Zeke. So it will be imperative that the coaching staff does whatever they can with JT Barrett, with the passing game to loosen it up, or Zeke we'll find some tough sledding, but that's just my, I don't want to say ominous prediction, but I think that that's kind of what Ohio State fans need to be prepared for, because they've seen it in the games leading up to it. You just mentioned the idea of like 8-9 men in the box. You can bet that Michigan State and that team up north will do the same thing.
Oh, without a doubt. And like the last 4 games of the month of November, each team that they face, from Minnesota to Illinois, on paper, each week they face a tougher rushing defense. This week, on paper, Illinois is a tougher rushing defense than Minnesota. Minnesota's was pretty formidable. It took Zeke, almost all game in order to get to 100. Will that happen this week with JT being back under center? No. I don't see that taking for a while. Like I predicted earlier, this one's going to be a statement game for them, and they're wanting to show some stuff, or just based on a simple fact of put something in Sparty in the Wolverines' mind. Here comes the big boys. We don't belong at the big boy table yet. That will do it for our MotSaG Ask MotSaG segment. Remember, you could ask questions, hit us up on Twitter at the hashtag AskMotSag, or you could send us an email at askmotsag@motsag.com. Alrighty, unfortunately, that's going to do it for us here on Men of Scarlet and Gray podcast. Hate this part, especially when you have such a great guest and we get to discuss our favorite subject together, Chip. We want to thank Robert Rosenthal from IlliniBoard.com. You can also follow him on Twitter at @ALionEye. Really great discussing the Illinois team and what is all going on with the craziness in Champaign with them. We want to thank our listeners for joining the show by submitting questions. If you have any questions, don't forget, hit us up on Twitter using the hashtag @AskMotSag, or email us askmotsag@motsag.com. We truly do enjoy interacting with you guys. It's always a great time. You can listen and subscribe to our show on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, YouTube, Tuned In, everywhere, basically. Just put in Men in Scarlet and Gray in a search bar, and you should be able to find us no problem. And, of course, don't forget Buckeye Sports Radio. You can follow Buckeye Sports Radio on Twitter at Buckeyes Radio. Chip, where can everybody find your work and your Twitter handle?
I can be found on Twitter at Chip Minnick, MINNICH. I'm a writer and contributor for menofthescarletandgray.com, as well as for athlonsports.com. Want to thank Robert again for all of his contributions, for giving us a solid preview and understanding of the upcoming Ohio State at Illinois game.
Excellent. You can find mine, along with our other talented writers, on menofthescarletandgray.com. My Twitter handle is at SMSummers, SOMMERS84. You can follow the show on Twitter at MotSaG Podcast and like us on Facebook. For Chip Minnick, I am Shannon Summers. Thank you for listening to Men in Scarlet and Gray podcast on Buckeye Sports Radio, a V Sporto channel. Talk to you all next week. Go Bucks.
Go Bucks.